One thing people ask a lot is what's with the two pickups? And the reason we position them like that is, let's face it, Leo Fender wrote the book on bass guitar. There's no question. And popular music grew up around Fender basses. And that's the Jazz, the P, and then eventually the Stingray. And there's something about a Stingray with that big humbucker right in the sweet spot. It just has a mid-range that is so distinctive and so usable and so musical that we really haven't tried to deviate from Leo's recipe. So this is basically our version of a Stingray. It's two precision pickups sandwiched together in the sweet spot. The neat thing about having the pickups so close together is that when you go back and forth between them, it's not such a radical change in tone that you have to go back to your amp and adjust your EQ. You can just switch back and forth and get different tones without having to upset the apple cart, so to speak. So that's the NG2. The NG2 is based off of the Combustion. And Combustion was our first attempt at an import instrument. And it's been a really great experience for us. The factory we work with in China, they build Fender, they build Epiphone, they build Fernandez. They're a really high quality factory. And then on top of that, they will deal with companies like us who are just small, tiny little builders. But they're also passionate about what they do. And what their interest in us is trying to learn our passion, trying to learn what it takes to be operating at the high end of the boutique market. And so they kind of give me the keys to the factory when we go in there, and if I see a process that could be improved, then they sit down and they get my ideas on it and they implement them. And so over the 5 or 6 years that we've been working with them, we've actually changed their production quite a bit, to, especially on our instruments, but also on their own instruments. So this is the Combustion. Same body, same neck, but with an EMG preamp this time, and with the pickups spread out. And now the EMG preamp is a nice, I'm going to say generic, but not generic in a bad way, generic in a, these are the exact tone frequencies that you'd want. If you're going to spec out your own 3-band preamp, that's what it would be. And Bobby Vega had a lot of input on this preamp, and it's just a wonderful sounding preamp. Preamp, it's almost hard to get a bad tone out of it. It's more subtle than the dark glass. The dark glass, you can get in trouble real fast because there's so much range on the controls. The EMG is, let's say, roughly 10 dB of boost and cut. So you almost can't make a bad selection. It's a really, really nice preamp. The third preamp we use is in this AVHS. This is a Glockenklang. A couple of the features I forgot to mention is, as a repair person, the one thing I always noticed was I'd get a guitar in for repair and there'd be a truss rod cover and it would be missing a screw. And it would be a funny, odd little screw, and I'd have to patch the hole and I'd have to find another screw. So I grew to dislike truss rod covers very quickly. So all of our basses have a cover-free slot. You can adjust your truss rod kind of in between songs if you needed to. Ironically enough, we learned from Fury how to make truss rods and how to install them so that you hardly ever have to adjust your truss rod. But if you did, and you didn't lose your wrench, it would be real quick. The other thing that I noticed was that custom battery boxes were usually broken, and battery boxes with screws had the same problem. The screws are stripped. So what we do is we use a magnetic cover, and that's all it takes to access your batteries. Just why can't I get that? There we go. Just in and out, change your battery, off you go. The third thing that you'll notice on here is a countersunk strap pin. And what that strap pin does is, I mean, we make long necks, there's no question. It's a 37-inch scale. It can be a bit of a stretch for some people, especially if you're playing all night. So what we've done is we've created a third strap pin that's inboard. And by positioning your strap here, it just moves the whole base over by about 1.5 inches. And that 1.5 inches is enough to just reduce your reach. It makes a huge difference. If you hold the base up a little bit like this too, it almost feels like a short scale base. And it's just a simple little strap pin adjustment. So this is a Glock and Clang preamp. One of the cool features of the Glock and Clang is this treble control. It's half active, half passive. If you describe the differences in tone between the Dark Glass and the Glock and Clang, which are our two most popular preamps, I could explain it in frequencies, but I think the best way to explain it would be culturally. The Glock and Clang is made in Germany, and it's very precise, it's very transparent, and it's just a great, highly engineered preamp. Whereas the Dark Glass is more Latin. It's more in your face, it's louder, it's more aggressive. So that would be the two best ways to describe those two preamps. So if you want precise and transparent, Glock and Clang is your preamp. If you want aggressive and loud and in your face, Dark Glass. How would you describe that attack?
It's probably more compressed, and it's definitely like a
Quicker off the finger?
quicker off the finger, yeah.
A lot of that has to do with the Wenge neck and then the combination of that and this Bubinga body. Wenge is really stiff, and it's a drier wood, so it doesn't have oils in it that would damp the high end like a rosewood would have. And it's alternating layers of hard and soft wood, and so you get this duality of tone. You get lots of sparkle on the top end, and you get lots of warmth on the bottom end, and that stiffness. It's a pretty wonderful wood. It's one of my favorite neck woods, period. And the Bubinga body itself is heavy, solid, and that's the tone you get out of it. It's heavy, solid.
Yeah. Sounds like it would be a great pick bass or slap.
Yeah.
Quick attack.
I guess the last bass in our arsenal is the D-Bird, and so this is one that has been on the drawing board for like 6 years. It's our version of the Thunderbird, and the Thunderbird was originally designed by a car designer, and he was the original design head for Chrysler, and he had a really great career in the early part of the last century, and designed some very famous cars. I can't remember any off the top of my head right now, but he designed the original Firebird and Thunderbird, and I got to thinking, well, what would happen if instead of the head of Chrysler, you had the head of Lamborghini design take a look at it? And so the curves on this have been influenced by Lamborghini. As a matter of fact, I had this bass at the Lamborghini dealership in London this week, and they were just as excited about having this bass in their showroom as we were having the bass in their showroom, taking pictures with their cars. It turned out really, really well. I wasn't sure when I first walked in if we were going to get kicked out or not, because you don't just walk into the Lamborghini showroom, you have to be let in. It's all locked, and you ring the doorbell, and they take a look at you, and maybe they'll let you in, maybe they won't.
Check the labels on your shirts.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Awesome.
So, a couple of things that we did in addition to the D-Bird. I'm just going to get strapped around here. The original design, you can tell it was designed by a car guy, because car guys don't have to deal with balance and instruments. And early on, before I started building basses, I remember I was backstage at a Jeff Healey concert, and a bass showed up for the bass player to try, and I watched him. And he opened up the case, he picked up the bass, he put it on a strap, and he went, "It's neck heavy." Took it off, set it back in the case, he said, "Send it back." He never played a note. And from that, I was like, oh my God, balance is pretty important. So that's been something that has been a real focus for us. Every single one of our instruments, even our traditional styled ones like our J's and P's, we have tweaked the shapes. You wouldn't notice it unless you held up the original and held them side by side. You wouldn't be able to see the difference, but we've lengthened the horns, all in an attempt to get it to balance. And Ryan's standing there, and it's not moving around, which is not an easy thing to do on a Thunderbird.
And it's a nylon strap too. Not forgiving for balance.
So the other thing we did was on this, we moved the strap in like I showed on the HS, and that normally the Thunderbird is quite a bit of a stretch, even with the standard scale length. And this is actually a 36.25 inch scale length. You could tune this quite easily to be EAD and have like the low end of a 5-string, but with the comfort of a 4-string, and it would have great tension, it would have great tone, but still not feel like you're playing way out here. Now, by the way, this is a prototype that's a 1 of 1 at this point. I encourage anybody who wants to try it to give it a try today. Pete, you should probably leave it here for a week or two if you want.
Okay.
Essentially, what we're trying to do is